wanted to give you a quick little explanation on the difference between vector graphics that you draw in Adobe Illustrator and raster graphics that you draw in Photoshop. So this is mainly for my students who are transferring from Photoshop into Illustrator. You need to know that they're very different types of programs, and let me show you a little bit about what I mean. So on the left-hand side, we have the same picture on both sides, but the left-hand side is the Adobe Illustrator version, which is a vector graphic, and the right-hand side is Photoshop, which is the raster or bitmap version. So first of all, the main difference is if you look at the Photoshop document, it's made out of pixels, right? So when you blow this up, you're enlarging the pixels, and the more you blow it up, the bigger the pixels get, and then you start to get these jaggy little lines because you can see each pixel as you blow it up. So if you were trying to print this really big, like a big sign in the gym, you can see how it would look pretty terrible once you got really big with it. But if you go over here to the Illustrator document, you can blow this up and I can enlarge it and keep going and going and going. And you can see how the line stays perfectly crisp. It doesn't lose any resolution because it's not pixels. So when you're not working with pixels, you're working with something that's called paths. And paths are basically little lines. So when I drag my mouse over here, you can see it highlights all these shapes in blue, and these show you where the path is. I can do Control Y to preview, and you can see how each one of these paths is like a shape that's kind of cut out. So this is let me get the direct select tool. This is just the white path. So if I go back into the actual art mode, you can see that in order to make a white shape, there had to be a path drawn, and that shape is filled in with white. So I guess my best analogy to way to understand that a little bit better is if you think of Illustrator as kind of like paper cutouts. So you see over here on the right how, you know, this green shirt here is actually just a shape that's cut out and it's filled in with green. You know, the legs are just black paper that's cut out. And so Illustrator is pretty much the same way. Any color that you want, you have to make a shape and fill it with that color. So the disadvantage is maybe something like if you were working in Photoshop and you wanted to have like a soft shadow underneath the Titan mascot's helmet, you could just go over here and you could get a brush. You could have a soft brush, and you could just, you know, feather in this faded shadow, and it has a soft brush. So it would look like that. But in Illustrator, you can't do that. There's no soft brushes. You would actually need to just draw that shape in there. So let me try to do that real quick. If I wanted it to be black underneath the helmet, I would have to actually draw a path. This is going to be sloppy, but at least it gives you an idea what I'm trying to do. I would actually have to draw a black path in there and then draw the path and then fill it with the color. So there's no like soft blending, you know, airbrushing like you can in Photoshop. There are gradients, so there are ways to still accomplish some color blending. You know, you can still draw a gradient, so a color that fills from one to another. So you can still do stuff like that. You can fill in things with gradients, but you can't really just airbrush soft blends. So in Illustrator, you're not going to be working with photography at all. It's all going to be, this is called vector graphics, and they're just they're done mathematically versus pixels. So let's say if you were going to send this to like a machine that cut out a decal, the machine can understand how to cut along the edges of these paths. So it's actually, let me show you how to like edit the shape. If you wanted to like make his arm look a little bit different, you would actually pull these things called anchor points. Each thing, it's like connect the dots. They're made with little points. You probably used the pen tool in Photoshop and worked with that a little bit. So Illustrator is all working with paths like this. And so when you click on one of these things, they're called anchor points. And then they have these things called a handle. You can change the shape of something by changing the direction that you're pulling the handle. All right, so we'll get into it more as we go with our projects, but I just wanted you to have a basic understanding of the difference between a vector graphic that you draw in Illustrator and a bitmap or raster graphic that you draw in Adobe Photoshop.